Darkness, unescapable darkness. It was this where most people feared for when they were on the brink of death after going through a painful event that would end their lives. Except for Naruto Uzumaki, who just had finished his fight against Sasuke Uchiha in the Valley of the End, right after he'd finished fighting against Kagaya Otsutsuki, and beating her previously, and before that, fighting across the battlefield in the Fourth Shinobi World War with every fiber in his being. Having thrown in all his energy, stamina into this Forsaken war, he'd basically pushed his limits too far and now was dying, from both a mix of wounds Sakura had tended were reopened the dangerously low levels of chakra he now had. He hadn't even noticed he was in a pretty bad shape that most other people wouldn't even be able to comprehend. Yet, no panicking or hyperventilating or even crying. Naruto just laid on the dark floor as he had his eyes open as he was waiting for the inevitable fate that was succumbing to him.
I guess death ain't such a scary thing after all. I'm tired, I'm bleeding out, and yet, I still feel at peace. Maybe this was the feeling Neji had when he died.
Neji Hyuga was one of the many who died in this war to stop Madara's plot to enact his plan to use all the tailed beasts to project the infinite Tsukuyomi on the moon in order to trap the entire world in a dream. With a clear goal to entrance the whole world in the dreaming trance to end the human violent nature that was walking the earth. With the support of Obito Uchiha, a former pupil and comrade of his sensei, Kakashi, and someone who was like Naruto, but turned to a darker path than him. An unrealistic and unwilling plan many in the shinobi villages across the world fought against, mainly the 5 great shinobi countries that threw every shinobi they had into the battle. Many had died, so many, too many to even begin to count. With the war coming to an end, the aftermath won't be full of celebrations, but instead be filled with mourning families across the continent who will grieve their lost loved ones who weren't going to return back home. He would be one of those, to be mourned by those he would leave behind. Here he was 18 years of age and about to die. What did he have to show? Nothing. He wouldn't get to be Hokage. He wouldn't get to be with Sakura. The only thing he'd be remembered for is a name on a tombstone. Well, he'd at least met his parents before his passing, maybe even reuniting with them in whatever comes after.
Now, the eternal rest.
Naruto's eyes began to close slowly for the last time, unable to stop staring at the blue sky as it was turning normal. His ears seemed to be not hearing the many screams of his name as he could sense multiple people running for his position, including one pale-eyed girl who was taking the lead. So long, everyone. I did my part. Hopefully, it all ends here.
Once he closed his eyes fully with a comfortable smile on his face, Naruto left the life of the shinobi world.
Kid, wake up. Wake up.
Ah! Naruto gasped for air, blinking a few times. Where am I?
Still in the land of the living, kid. But you and I are in big trouble now. Kurama spoke to his friend with some concern. Because we're somewhere where we're not supposed to be.
What are you talking about?
Would you believe me that? I don't know, we've been sent to a different dimension. Kurama said in a rather unsure tone that Naruto had never heard him use before. Single quote ... Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked after what I've witnessed today. Naruto groaned, lying on his back. Dimly, he noticed that the ground felt cold and wet, like a backstreet. I've fought the Biju, ninja zombies, Madara, Obito, and Sasuke all in about one day. I'm too damn tired to be surprised.
Yeah, well, take a look around and see if you still feel that way. Why so?
Take a look by yourself.
Naruto's eyes opened, taking upon Kurama's advice, began raising himself from the cold ground, with much trouble with getting up as his body still was suffering from exhaustion, and his wounds. He pushed himself up to the point he stood firm on his 2 legs. Taking a look around his surroundings, he noticed he was indeed in a back alley, with trash containers and rats surrounding and scattering away from the human. He looked up, and began to notice just how tall the buildings he was surrounded by were, looking much taller than any building he had seen back in Konoha.
I don't like where this is going, Naruto said to himself. He began limping towards the end of the alley where the light was. Going towards it, he heard the sound of pedestrians and weird loud construction work or something. The closer he got, the louder the sounds became. Upon exiting the back street, he was met with a ray of sunlight that shone in his eyes, making him reflexively shield them. Once his vision adjusted, he took a good look at his surroundings. Naruto gazed at the river, his unbelieving eyes watching ships being propelled without wind. Off to the side, he could see two ships that were as big as the Hokage Tower. One looked like a military vessel, based on the colors and the pointy weapons. The other reminded him of a transport ship, but they looked like they could float several of his apartment buildings. Looking to his left, his head craned up and up, seeing buildings that disappeared into the clouds. Hearing something loud, he looked up and saw a large metal bird fly overhead. In his mind, Naruto was thinking, what type of world did I end up in?
Wow. Wow indeed, kid. Wow indeed. Kurama was also at a loss for words, too shocked by what he was seeing. Look out! Someone shouted out. Screech.
Naruto just turned his head to the sound and got nearly hit by something that just stopped right in front of his face, what to him looked like a horseless stagecoach with windows on its front. Hey, you fucking little shit. The driver of it began shouting with his head out. The shouting ended, as Naruto was still in his mind. I don't know what it is, but you're lucky that thing did not run over you, kid. Or you would have been done for.
How so? You just heal me up like always. Why would it be different this time? Well, it's mainly because of two reasons I can explain for the moment. With one, being that your chakra coils, basically all over your body, are now heavily damaged, and that prevents my chakra from spreading around to heal you.
Okay, what's the second reason? Take a look at yourself, and especially at your left arm, or what's left of it.
Naruto asked before he took on Kurama's suggestion, and really did take a look around himself, and it really was a sight that he was in. His body was just as beat up as when he'd finally beaten Sasuke. His clothes were torn to shreds, barely hanging off his body, and even those old wounds were reopening, dripping with blood and leaving a trail as he stumbled out of the alleyway. His face was heavily bruised, one eye swollen shut, and his left arm was gone from the elbow down. Oh, now I see it. Too bad for my arm, though. Still surprised how calm you're taking all of this, having the fact your fucking arm got ripped off in the battle.
Well, seeing I repaid that favor back to Sasuke, I guess that I am pretty much satisfied at the moment, with the war over and the others saved and all.
Even with the fact you're stuck in wherever shithole we are, and you won't be able to keep your promises, or become Hokage. So long as everyone in the village is alright, I can live with it. Okay, because I think right now you'll be dealing with these people. Hey, kid!
Naruto got out of his thoughts and was facing this guy, who seemed to have come out of this carriage with his passenger. Both were wearing gray overalls and hats that indicate they were on their job. With the one speaking to him being a rounder, tan-skinned man with a full mustache and glasses, while the other guy was a lighter-skinned person, definitely Caucasian, who seemed to be holding something against his ear and speaking into it.
Are you alright? Naruto looked at the man. He did not answer as he was having trouble understanding him. I asked, Are you alright? The man asked, sounding pretty much concerned as Naruto saw the shock in his eyes on what he was seeing. What's your name? No response was given.
Your name? The man asked him as he stepped closer to him. Can't you understand me?
Don't answer it, kid. Huh. Why? Just don't, Kurama told him. Say you need to sit down. We'll figure out something later after you get patched up. Kid? Your name? The man asked again. In hope to derail the questioning, Naruto decided to play along with Kurama's idea. He pointed at the bench he walked past, seemingly to ask if he could sit.
The older man wanted to say something else, but then noticed the blood kept dripping, and he was even unfortunate enough to see the state of Naruto's left arm, or whatever remained of it. Of course, go on, there's a bench right there. The man told him, deciding to prioritize the kid's condition first. He led him towards an empty bench where he placed him. Sit here, okay? Help is on the way.
the man said before turning to his colleague. Frankie! They're coming! They're coming! Move the van out of the way.
Naruto sat down on the wooden bench and heard the two yelling at each other, not paying attention to them as he tried to not give much thought to the pain he was having now. Those wounds were feeling bad and he knew that he'll need medical attention fast. Oh my lord. Look at that guy.
The fuck happened to him?
The leaf shinobi looked around his surroundings and wanted to know who was saying those comments, and saw that a lot of people were standing like statues on where they had stopped.
Their faces were filled with either shock or disbelief, as some of them were unable to move a foot, as some were seen with their kids or walking out with their dogs. They could not move their eyes from the blood-stained state the blonde was in.
Naruto took no notice of them as he just sat against the bench, tense, trying to ease the pain as much as he could, not wanting to make any bad movements already.
Sir. It was then that he felt a hand on his shoulder, causing Naruto's reflexes to kick in, as he was ready to pull out his kunai knife. Whoa, easy, easy. I'm here to help. The man who patted him was a white woman, who quickly walked around the bench to try and help him. Just lay back, sir, you're going to be fine. Hey, woman, leave him alone, the fat man said to him in his thick accent. Let the paramedics handle him.
Hey, buddy, let me do my job. I'm an actual doctor. The woman did not take this slightly and spoke back. Instead of arguing, try and give me some help. I need to clean this kid's wounds.
Fine. What do you need? For starters, some towels or fabric with water could help.
Here, ma'am, take this. A bystander offered her his unopened water bottle to her. Please.
The woman took it. Thanks.
I've got some towels in the van, let me get them. The younger guy said as he sprinted for the vehicle, as more bystanders were getting closer, making a small crowd around the bloodied teenager who seemed to be still tense and on his guard.
He was still holding onto the kunai knife in his right hand, gripping it out of the sight of everyone, only to be seen by the female doctor. Hey, kid.
Naruto turned to the female doctor and saw she had her hand over his hand that held the blade.
Mind if I?
Not needing to figure it out long, Naruto nodded his head and loosened his grip on it to allow her to take the knife from his blood-stained hand, as she held the kunai knife over his fishnet shirt.
Shirk.
Cutting the shirt through the middle, she removed it and what she saw got her to look at something that was harrowing to watch. Multiple stab wounds over the chest and stomach and a literal hole in the chest was close to the lungs, like a massive gunshot wound. This of course gained some gasps from the watching crowd, something that the doctor could not use now.
Oh sweet Jesus.
Can you all please take a step back? She said before removing her jacket and putting it over his arm. Where are those towels? Here, the overall young man came rushing forwards and handed them over to the doctor. Paramedics are on the way, Jesus Christ.
I know. The doctor responded as she began pouring water over the blood-covered chest, and began cleaning it up. Try and keep everyone from a distance. Naruto's eyes became heavier as it was tempting for him to close them, causing the doctor to snap her fingers in his face. Clicking click.
Hey, stay awake, she told him while treating him as she could hear the sirens. Help's on the way, stay with me.
The eyelids just kept lowering down. His energy was finally coming to an end as his head slumbered back while he drifted away into unconsciousness. The only thing he felt was a pair of hands catching his head, and multiple voices telling the crowd to step aside. He then felt his body being lifted, getting hooked on breathing material and tubes as he was brought away. Hang on, kid. I think these people might be capable of taking care of you. The last thing before his mind began shutting off was that he heard the sirens going on again, and him being checked on, as was his arm, feeling bandages being put on.
And the last thing he was hearing was the familiar heart monitor, reading his life.
Beep, 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 beep.
Beep.
Come on, stay with me, damn it. The female doctor was heard as she was trying to save the person's life with chest compression.
That was the sound of the heart monitor telling the patient's heart was flatlining, meaning she was losing the man who was laying on this makeshift operation table she was forced to operate on. The doctor's name was Jessica Candle, a doctor and virologist who was one of the few left in Manhattan, New York City, the current epicenter of the country's worst smallpox challenge, the dollar flu outbreak. Many might question, wasn't smallpox already eradicated? Yes, it was supposed to be gone decades ago, but somehow a smallpox outbreak did occur in the middle of one of the U.S. biggest and busiest cities. That was a question that still to this day, months after the outbreak, has yet to be answered by anyone who was caught with their pants down. What was known at this point is that the first cases of this virus had been reported in just days after Black Friday happened, with it first being brushed aside as a part of the flu, thinking it was just a fever and that a few medicines and days off would kick it off and let it go with the flow. That was perhaps the first and only chance to prevent its initial outbreak. Because it had gotten worse, with it turning into a flu pandemic to a smallpox outbreak after the first dead were counted, and the tests came back from the doctors that it was indeed this deadly virus. The situation deteriorated sooner than anyone had expected, with the first 2 days of December descending into chaos, as almost two-thirds of the whole of Manhattan was evacuated out of the island, including the diplomats, government employees and Wall Street people who were the first to exit the island in safety.
It was clear at that point that this was no normal outbreak. The first reports about the spread of the virus that were released suggested that the viral infection managed to spread out quickly through the US dollar currency that was being handed out during the Black Friday. CERA, short for Catastrophic Emergency Response Agency, had outrightly denied those reports were valid and dismissed it. But that did not bring confidence in anyone who was witnessing it firsthand. That was when the name dollar flu first came up, with the virus having jumped from dollar bills to the human skin. That became the reality that many people came to realize with.
On the third day of December, things only seemed to get worse, as the infrastructure of Manhattan seemed to be on the edge of its power grid falling out multiple times, and water seeming to be barely coming through the island, and the internet connection with also the TV networks having failed already, cutting the island off from the world, basically. The next day after that, on the 4th of December, the situation changed dramatically, with the federal government taking the gloves off and implementing a citywide quarantine across New York City, the state of New York itself and neighboring New Jersey. With the military having established a base of operations along the East River near the Queens Midtown Tunnel.
Who would have thought that in a few days the military was going to take control over New York City at this pace? For Dr. Candle, it was just another worry she had to put back in her mind, as she was still trying to figure out how to work in these conditions. Short-handed, no knowledge, short-equipped, and overwhelmed by the influx of patients. Officially, on December the 5th, the first cases of the dollar flu were reported in Bellevue Hospital, and the recognition of this disease was recognized as smallpox the next day. Unofficially, the people on the field were seeing this from day one. Still, it wasn't enough, as the virus kept spreading around in an unseen pace that only caused more chaos, so much that the 42nd Infantry Division of the Army National Guard had to be mobilized while CERA was turning Hudson Yards into an operating base.
Up to the 12th, things only seemed to go downhill further, with the death toll rising up in unprecedented numbers that weren't seen in almost a century, causing the authorities to fully go on lockdown mode by closing off all the bridges, isolating the island of Manhattan.
Yet, even that seemed to cause even more trouble, with violent riots breaking out across Manhattan that caused daily incursions between now groups of looters and police and military forces. It did not help that when the situation became so out of control, that the military officially retreats from Manhattan, leaving hundreds of police, firefighters, and government officials behind, along with thousands of civilians.
With all the other stuff left out, most of the month of December went down a cliff more and more for Dr. Candle and anyone else trying to keep their city alive.
Even when the city's death toll had reached a depressing number. 300 deaths in a month. A horrifying number that sounded like it came from an apocalyptic movie, or a biblical tragedy.
Yet still, there were people who were trying to keep whatever that was repairable and knit it together. Like Dr. Candle, who tried with her team of remaining medical doctors and nurses, to turn Madison Square Garden and turn it into a field hospital. But that also ended up badly, when a group of rioters entered the building and took the doctors hostage, while either chasing away the civilians or killing those who refused to leave. With her now working in Kobe's with her Sarah staff, right above the basketball pitch that was abandoned with a lot of equipment wrecked. With Dr. Candle now trying to save the life of this rioter who was shot in the chest, with his wet jacket already covered in blood, she knew the patient was already done for with the bullet having hit the artery and the patient having bled to death.
B.
The sound of the monitor ended when Candle had pulled out the plugs out of the patient. Seeing it was no use anymore, she looked at the time and took notes at his date and time of death.
Time of death? 1842. It's overdue. No, it's not. The man behind her shouted at her, a gun pointed at her back, carrying a 586 Magnum. He threatened her. You're a doctor. And as a doctor, I must tell you, he's dead.
You're bullshitting.
No, I am not. His arteries. Shut up and patch him up.
There's no point in patching him up. Candle shouted back at the gunman. He's already lost over 40% of his blood.
Then give him more blood. There is no blood left. She raised her voice against the gunman. There's nothing left. He's dead, face it. Click. The gunman just cocked the revolver and points it right at the doctor's forehead. Taking a look at the person, he was clearly young, and was pretty desperate.
The others who were watching, both rioters and the medical staff, watched at the commotion, with them wondering how this was going to end. You want me to try it, don't you? What are you going to do, shoot me? Candle said to the kid, having no patience left. Because if you do, you got to explain it to your fucking boss why you killed Doctor for trying her fucking job.
Why you? Stop it, Mac. Another guy came in between, carrying a Monia carbine rifle. The guy wore a blue hoodie and baggy pants. Ain't no use to spill a bullet. This bitch got well. Do you want me to tell Hutch why you killed her? The carbine rifleman asked his friend. Hutch was the leader of the group who took over Madison Gardens, a large bastard who was not scared to get his hands dirty, but also had a vicious reputation. So much that it reminded the Magnum-carrying hothead who was in charge and what he'd be facing. No.
Good, the sniper told him. Because I'm not going to cover you when do something stupid. Not after what he did to Kenny, after he threw him off the building for stealing rations.
I know.
Then stop threatening to kill all these doctors. He snapped at the hothead Mac before he turned to the doctor and took a look at the guy who lay on the table.
You sure there's nothing you can't do for Simon? Candle shook her head, giving that shaking gesture as her only response. The sniper turned back to the hothead and was about to tell him something. Gunfire.
The sound of gunfire got the rioters in Kobe's to stay on guard, as they began pulling out their armaments. The fuck was that? The hothead Mac demanded. Is it the JTF?
JEF? Can't be. They're still stuck at the post office. Another rioter spoke. Poole and his crew are busy there. There must be something else. Bang! The second round of gunfire was rapid, and more followed as soon as it sounded nearby. Whatever it is, it's coming from the basketball court, the sniper said before pointing at three guys. You three, go down and check it out.
The three rioters nodded and checked their arms before running down the hallway towards the basketball pitch to see what the commotion was. He then turned to the Sarah staff, which was a handful of 4 people, 3 doctors and a nurse.
As for you people, into the food locker now. He turns to Mac, lock them up. Hey.
Do it, the sniper said as he ran for the other side towards the elevators. I'm going to get back up, the rest of you, stay here.
All the armed thugs quickly took action and went to prepare their firearms as they took positions, while the sound of gunfire started getting closer, and it sounded like multiple guns were going off. causing a bit of a panic amongst them. "Move it now." Mac began forcing the doctors to the back, kicking them when they slowed or tried to protest. "Go, or else I'll shoot." The only nurse fell down after getting kicked by the hothead and was getting kicked more, unable to stand up. "I said move." He began to abuse and berate her while she was done. "Move, you bitch!" "Ah!" the nurse yelled in pain. Dr. Candell took notice as the others entered the food locker. She took action and ran up. "Stand up, bitch!" The hothead Mac kicked one last time before aiming his gun at her. "You wanna die? Want a bullet in your head?" "No!" Bang! The bullet flew past the nurse's head as Dr. Candell had basically thrown herself on him, and began fighting over the gun while they were leaning over the Kobe's counter, knocking over everything that was laid there and adding more to the mess. "Run, Angelica, now!" Dr. Candell shouts as she was trying to take the gun, fighting over it or at least stalling him long enough for her to run. The nurse got up and ran for the food locker room, just when the fight continued.
"You bitch." He had smacked Candle over her head and knocked her off him, as she landed right on her back, just when the food locker door got closed from the inside, just when the hothead shot at it.
Bang! The bullet bounced off from the metal door, and he was stupid enough to fire twice more. Bang! Bang! Both bullets bounced off again, with one even hitting the hothead's leg, just above his knee. "Fuck!" he shouted in pain as he held his bleeding leg and seethed through his teeth. "Fuck! Fuck! Fucking door!"
Candle decided to take her chance and try to reach for the food locker.
"You!" Ah. The female doctor screamed as her hair got yanked from behind, really violently, as it was Mac who was now fully enraged and was going fully violent at her, by beginning to smash her head multiple times against the counter. This was fully watched by the remaining members of the rioters who were guarding Kobe's. "Mac, calm the fuck down," one of the others yelled. "I've had it with you fucking people." He forced her to turn around and press the revolver right into the right cheek of the doctor, and was about to crush her cheekbones with the pressure he was putting on her cheek. "Via the barrel." "Any last words, bitch?" "Spit." That was her response, spitting a mouthful of saliva into the guy's eyes, over his mouth-covered scarf that even got wet off it. She shouted, "Go fuck yourself!" "Fuck it!" he yelled. "You're dead." Click, click. Bang!
That gunshot was from up close, as if it was fired from up close, too close for the rioters as they ducked down to cover, and began waving around their guns to see where that gunshot came from.
What was that? Gunshot, moron. But from where? Any of us? Misfired? One asked with a Kalashnikov. "Mac, tell us." He turned his head around as he choked on his words on what he saw. There stood Mac, not saying a word through his big mouth because he was in shock, but also for the fact he had a gunshot wound that had gone straight through his head, as the hole leaking blood over his head. Mac's body succumbs his weight onto the doctor, who quickly pushes it aside, petrified by what she just saw happen. She stood there as a stone statue and watched at the body that fell on its back with his eyes open.
The fuck happened?
Hostiles.
Over there. Open fire. A gunfight erupted. This time it was close combat as Candle took cover behind the counter and held her legs close to her and shielded her ears as the fighting continued, and she could hear the fight unfolding. Kill them pricks.
Take cover. Neutralize the targets.
From all sides, gunfire could be heard erupting, becoming clear to the doctor that another party had just arrived and began engaging in a fight with her and her staff's hostage takers.
Pop, 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 pop. Bang, 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 bang.
A spray of bullets of many calibers hit the countertop, with bullets whizzing right over the doctor's head, bouncing off the wood and burrowing into it as everyone just unloaded at each other to the coverings. Doctor, her demise.
Move in, I'll give you cover.
Look out, ah. They're pushing us back.
Hold them back. The gunfire continued on, until someone decided to end it with the following move. Frag out. Grenade. Boom.
A grenade exploded close to the counter, and the sound of several groans indicated that a few were caught by the shrapnel explosion, while also blasting away the remaining items on top of the counter that Dr. Candle was hiding under.
She then noticed the shooting had come to a halt, indicating the fighting had ended only in mere moments after it had begun, even as it sounded to her like it was lasting for an hour.
Hesitant to stand up, her head began to speculate that these might be rival gangs who were raiding others, with it not being her first time seeing this.
Check the bodies for ammo. Someone ordered at the sound of multiple footsteps entering Kobe's. Pat them down and take any essentials you can find. On it, sir.
They sounded very professional, like military guys, meaning they couldn't be a ragtag bunch of criminals, so she decided to take a peek over the counter and see who those voices belonged to. Entering Kobe's were a group of a half-dozen armed individuals, with most of them wearing a mixture of military, police, and regular winter clothing and camo gear, with most of their heads concealed with hats, masks, and some even military helmets that were non-camouflage. Their identities were hidden behind said coverings, and they were all armed to the teeth, aiming down at the now-deceased hostiles.
Dr. Candle decided to take her chances and said out loud, "Hey!" The armed men turned their attention, and their guns in the direction of the voice, seeing it was a female, in a doctor's outfit, with her hands up. Then one of them began approaching the counter, which was apart from the others, as the others wore balaclavas, or covered their faces with scarves. He wore no mask, only a scarf underneath his mouth, and wore a headband around his head that had a symbol with a scratch through it. That was underneath a military cap. He also wore a mostly black outfit, mostly military, that consisted of boots, pants, and a jacket that read SWAT on it with knee pads, a backpack and black gloves that covered his whole hands, and finishing it with a police holster that carried a Beretta 9 pistol. "Are you Dr. Jessica Candle, head of the medical unit in the post office?"
Currently holding, in his hands, was a modified Ishmash AKM that carried an extra magazine with a red dot ACOG attached to it and a grip. The sight of the gun alarmed her, as he stood over the body of a dead rioter who had earlier just was firing his own Kalashnikov rifle at them. "We've come here to rescue you," the man said, extending his hand to her as a friendly gesture. Quote, "And also hunt down this guy Hutch, but also rescue you."
Relief is what Dr. Candle felt as she released a sigh from her chest and responded, "Thank God it took you guys long enough." She climbed over the counter with the man's help, as two of his men walked to the back. "Some of my people," is what Dr. Candle felt as she released a sigh from her chest and responded, "Thank God it took you guys long enough." She climbed over the counter with the man's help, as two of his men walked to the back. "Some of my people are in the food locker, taking shelter." "All right. How many?"
"3 other doctors, and 1 nurse," she answered, being a little overwhelmed by the sight of the scene, with dead bodies lying everywhere and the armed men starting to scavenge anything from the dead troublemakers.
"Come out. The coast is clear," one of the armed men told the medical staff, who came out with their hands up.
Dr. Candle turned her head to the man who approached her, seeing him bend down below and check the dead body, and pulling out some ammo magazines.
7.62, he said, putting those mags inside his ammo patches. "Excuse me, I just have to pick something up." It was then that she saw the back of the man's backpack, and it had a red circle on it, something she had come across over the past few weeks, with people having that same kind of wristwatch and circle in the back.
Division, and that wasn't all, he was a rogue one. Thinking he had heard something, the man looked up to the doctor, and made eye contact with her, confusing her more as she'd seen those same pair of eyes from somewhere.
Those same blue eyes. "You don't remember me, do you?"
The doctor stiffened as the man stood right back up and faced her down, as he must stand 5 feet 11. She was slightly intimidated by the man who stood in front of her.
What do you mean? 11 years ago, near the Hudson River, he began. You saved my life when I came out of that alley, bloodied up and my left arm missing.
Then it became stone clear for the doctor who she was speaking to.
You. Rapid fire.
The sound of gunfire puts the armed men on alert as they point in every direction, with it continuing on for a good minute before one of the men begins.
Must come from the rooftop, the man closest said and told him. QB, we got to clear that rooftop. Right. The man named QB replied before turning to 3 other men of his group. You 3, escort them to the exit and wait until the coast is clear.
Right, the members replied as they began moving the medical staff towards the exit, with one of them carrying the battered nurse with her as she needed assistance with moving. The rest, come with me, Kyubi ordered his men as they split up, leaving Drive Candle to watch as the armed men went to the rooftop where the remaining rioters were held up.
Dr. Kendall kept running to stay close to the others, all while hearing more gunfire going off. Having come across the backup, one of the rioters said he was calling for.
Keep up, we're going downstairs. The African American member said to the medical personnel. We've got some boys covering the door. We only need to get there and wait for the commander to clear the rooftop.
Outside.
Hovering above Madison Square Gardens in Midtown Manhattan. A news helicopter that's confiscated by the JTF Joint Task Force was making flybys around the big arena as the pilots were told by intelligence about an anonymous tip about an operation that was taking place to retake the arena that very recently was taken over by a group of violent thugs who had turned it into one of their hideouts.
Gunfire.
The chopper came under fire when it was flying over the rooftop. With it taking distance away from the arena, it became clear who was the one open firing. An RPK-74M light machine gun was being fired upon against the JTF chopper, being fired for non-stop without any pause, with the gun getting overheated very fast, even showing bits of smoke. It being manned by the leader of the hostage takers, a guy named Hutch, who was the one who led his group to the gardens to try to take it over after word came in the JTF pulling out.
That intel had proven to be wrong.
Son of a bitch. He cursed as he felt the gun being overheated and tried to cool it off with some snow as he stared at the retreating chopper. Fucking JTF bastards.
Boss!
Hutch turns around to see his second in command, Scope, who was the sniper carrying guy who was running up to him with some other guys who were looking back at the far side of the rooftop. Scope, what are you doing here? I thought you went back. I went back, but they are already there. Scope said frantically. They're on their way up now.
Shit. Hutch cursed under his breath as he quickly told them. Defensive positions now. But, now. Gunshot. That sound got the remaining members of Hutch's gang to quickly hide, or cover behind the arena ventilators, with their arms aimed at the only other entrance of the rooftop, with the other behind them being fully blocked. The ones who were attacking them had to go through there. Hutch loaded another magazine in his RPK and leaned over his cover, aiming just right for the entrance with the weapon on fully automatic. Scope being next to him with his carbine rifle.
We'll hold them off long enough before we make a break for it. Hutch said to him. With the hostages gone and those supplies we found, we have no reason to stay here.
Sounds like a plan to me. Scope agreed while looking through his rifle magnifier of his rifle.
Taking a look at his buddy's rifle, as it was not a classic hunting rifle, but a modified version that wasn't made for hunting deer.
What's that noise? The sound of buzzing was very loud and it made the remaining members of the hostage crew very nervous, especially those who were only armed with semi-automatic pistols, who knew they were very much outgunned by their opponents. Foomp. 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 A few canisters got fired out of 3 different directions, leaving trails of white behind them as they landed on the rooftop.
Smoke grenades. Hutch waved his hand around. Spread out, spread out. When they landed, the canister spread around the thick white smoke and caused the rooftop to be covered in clouds of unseeable spaces that only caused more confusion in the ranks of Hutch's group.
What's this about? I can't see shit. They've got us trapped.
It only added more confusion to Hutch and his crew, who began wavering around their weapons at anything that looked suspicious, and panic was beginning to come around as the sound came back.
There's...
What's that fucking sound? One of the panicking members repeated it louder. What is it? Shut up. One of the others shouted at him, carrying a T-821 machine gun pistol as she was being the calm one.
There's...
The buzzing then ended.
It stopped. Click. Boom.
An explosion on the rooftop happened, just right behind Hutch and Scope, as the impact made them fall forwards to take cover, while the others could only aim for the air with their guns aimed and ready.
They're bombing us. What now? Fire. Bang, bang. Pop, 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 pop. The group began firing at the air, hoping to hit anything that was bombing them. Stop firing, you morons! Scope yelled out at them from his cover. Get down! Biz. The buzzing sound returned.
It's back.
Click. Get down! Boom!
This time the explosion was closer, with Scope and Hutch being lucky enough to stay in cover but having heard multiple screams going on. The RPK was now cooled down, allowing Hutch to take a peek over the cover and seeing what happened to the group in the middle, where 3 of his men stood. One of the men gasped in pain. Being caught in the explosion, he seemed to be the only survivor of the 3, the other 2 not moving any muscle anymore.
Look out.
Hutch heard him and asked, "What?"
Click.
They'd forgotten about the sound and reacted now, too late. Downstairs, at the same entrance where Dr. Candle and her staff finally arrived, they were escorted by members of Kyuubi's group, who then abruptly stopped right in front of it before they exited the building.
What the? Candle noticed them stopping. Come on. What are you waiting for? We've been ordered to bring you to the exit, that's all, the African-American told her. 2 JTF members are outside waiting for you. They'll bring you all back to the post office. But... Boom!
Another explosion rocked the earth. Again it came from the rooftop, as it was the 3rd one, alerting the members of Kyuubi's group to run back towards the rooftop.
Wait. Wow.
Go, just go, the African-American told her as he was the last to leave. Leaving the medical staff alone at the entrance as one JTF military man, a corporal to be precise, entered the building and spotted the group.
Hey, are you the medical staff? The corporal asked, looking for someone. Who's Dr. Candle? The virologist stepped forward. That'd be me. You came to escort us back to the post office, I assume?
Escort you? We came to rescue you. A couple of other JTFs came in. Who told you we'd be your escort? Matter of fact, how did you guys get out? Wait, so those armed guys who saved us aren't part of you? The nurse said, leaning against her colleague. Still recovering from the kicking from earlier. Step aside, Corporal. A sergeant stepped in and asked right away. What other armed men are you talking about, ma'am? Doctor. Candle paid no further attention to the rest of the conversation as she walked off, passing by the JTF and exiting the building, only to be met with the strong winter cold of Midtown Manhattan.
Looking around her, her sight was fixated on the surrounding buildings she grew up to. It was close to becoming night in NYC, and normally the buildings would shine the city up with its lights. A normal beautiful sight that basically made her fall in love with the city that she couldn't leave. Now, it was darkness that took over, as many of the buildings were cut off from electricity. And the buildings with their occupants, those who were still in it, were left in the dark, cold and hungry.
She then looked upwards towards the rooftop, unable to see what was happening. What she saw was white smoke descending from it, with it disappearing from the rooftop.
Whatever was happening up there, she most likely could guess. It was horrific.
Madison Square Gardens. Rooftop. The smoke had already begun weakening as the remnants of the explosions could be fully viewed, with the remaining members of the rioters' crew that took over the arena being all neutralized. The armed group that had earlier entered the building and saved the staff now was seen roaming the rooftop and checking the bodies of the formal hostiles, with some even grabbing whatever there was left in their pockets, backpacks and even ammunition.
One of the armed men kneeled down and checked the weapon of the deceased rioter. Grabbing it off her hands, he inspected the Tate 121 submachine gun pistol that he found to be in good state. "Let me see what you got."
The man decided to check the ammo and remove the magazine. Finding it to be empty, he rolled over the rioter's body and began going through her pockets and found some other valuable stuff. For example, some rations, an unopened bottle of water in the backpack, and some spare ammunition. Around 4 clips in total, and also a few prepared Molotov cocktails that have luckily not been destroyed.
"Well, that's all. Good night." He closed the rioter's eyes and went up, just as something flew over his head. Ziz!
What flew over his head was a drone, a small one that landed precisely in front of one of the armed men who kneeled down to it and packed it up before putting it in the back of his backpack that had an attachment ready for drones. 6 kills, with 2 shots. Good work, man. Another guy complimented the drone operator. Except for the first shot, of course. Oh, shut it. The drone operator gave him the finger just when he finished packing up the drone. "Let's just get out of here. My drone just picked up that JTF personnel are entering the building."
"You mean they're coming towards us?" "Yeah, but at a slow pace. Enough time for us to leave," the drone operator assured them. "But let's just move to be sure." Not without the commander's word, another one reminded them by pointing out, "He's still speaking to those prisoners." They all turned their heads to the other entrance and watched how their commander was facing 2 of the rioters, who were the only survivors of the attack, with it being Hutch and his second in command, Scope, both of whom had frozen looks on their faces.
Those looks weren't that of the cold weather, or even the fact they were captured, but the fact they recognized the person who was standing in front of them. The commander was picking up the modified M1A carbine rifle and took a look at it in front of the 2 prisoners. "This is a good gun. I wonder where you got it." He spoke nonchalantly about it. "I mean, this isn't a weapon designed to hunt in the woods. So I assume you stole this."
"You're supposed to be dead," Hutch screamed with fear in his eyes. "Why are you alive?" "That's not very nice, but I'll let that slip," the commander said before kneeling down to their level. "So, answer my question. Where did you get this?" "You're supposed to be dead." Hutch screamed it out again. "You're supposed to be Deval." Bang! A bullet ended the frantic last moments of Hutch, a bullet right through the head by the person next to the commander, slumping to the roof.
Scope was on the verge of throwing up until he got his jaws grabbed by a hand. The hand, for some reason, felt really metallic to his skin, and then he saw it. His whole arm was made out of metal and it only clarified who it was. "You're him. You're the guy who we've been told to avoid," the only remaining survivor said as he remembered the stories. "But they told us you all were dead, hunted down in the dark zone when you entered it."
"We've clearly shown that we're still alive," the commander told him. "So stop the bullshit. I should have known better that a bunch of Rikers couldn't kill you all." "First Division Agent, Commander Naruto." Scope set out the full name of the man who was standing in front of him.
It was indeed Naruto Uzumaki, age 29. He's the commander of the ragtag group of survivors that went through the rough month of December, which was total chaos in New York City. Believed to be killed in an operation up the eastern part of Midtown Manhattan, he'd just shown himself to a wounded rioter who was now one of the very few to know his current status.
"You know, there are a lot of people who want you dead now," Scope said. "Those BLM guys, those crazy fucks of the cleaners, and especially those Rikers, they're all on the hunt for you."
Naruto, who had grown into a different person than he was back 11 years ago, showed no fear but instead a smirk that was nostalgic to those who knew him. He did the following.
Luckily, I'm on the hunt too, Naruto said, raising the butt of the rifle. And you're going to be my bait. Whack.
Alright, here's the second chapter. I hope you all like it, because it has a relatively success rate now.
Location: unknown. Scope: the only survivor of the gang that took part in the Madison Square Gardens raid that he and a large group of his men partook in, now sat on a chair with a bag over his head. He couldn't see anything or even say anything with his mouth being gagged, but he could still hear what was going on as his ears were the only thing left off. While he was being dragged through the cold New York streets, half unconscious, he pretty much figured out he was being taken to their hideout, as he was kept under a headlock by one of them who also held a pistol pointed to the back of his skull to make sure he didn't try anything. As he was on his way, he didn't hear a word from them until they got off the streets and entered a building, presumably their hideout, which happens to be not far away from the gardens, possible a couple of blocks away. What he did know was two things. The first is that he was not in the post office, as these guys were absolutely not JTF personnel.
And secondly, their leader recognized him from the rumors he had heard and been warned off. Now, the only thing the lone rioter was hearing was full-on talk amongst them. He was somewhere warm, and he was spared by the one person he saw before getting knocked out for a moment.
Take it off. He's awake, the first voice said. Are you sure, boss? A second voice asked the first. He might still be dizzy. Scope then felt a hand grabbing his head and raising it up, before he released him. He's up, all right, I can talk to him. Go and fetch yourself something to eat, Hoopster.
Right, sir. The person identified as Hoopster left and the sound of a closing door was heard. Meaning he was inside some empty room as the other voices were gone.
All right, it's time for a little chat, but first, let's remove that bag. Scope then recognized that voice. It was from that guy, the same one who knocked him out, the person who he and his crew were warned about avoiding at any cost. It was... The bag was removed from his head, with the light above him getting into his eyes that made him squint his eyelids, and then when he opened them slowly, he saw the person in front of him. Naruto stood there on the opposite side of a metal bench, and the man recognized that the room he was in was an interrogation room, meaning they must be in a police station room.
Don't worry, we're not far off, Naruto said, sitting down. Gotta give my men some rest, and it's not far away from the JTF, so don't think you'll be able to escape.
What was laid on the table surprised him. An opened can of food, with a spoon and a warm plastic cup of coffee, black with sugar cubes laying next and milk. Looking up to Naruto, he saw the look on his face as he told him the following. I figured you'd like something to eat, so here, Naruto said, shoving the canned food in front of his prisoner as an offer before walking around and uncuffing him so he could use his hands. Careful, it's hot, so don't burn your tongue. Being hesitant, Scope was first becoming suspicious of what this person's intentions were. It only has been like a few hours, how he let Hutch be executed with a bullet to the head and knock him out with the butt of a rifle.
It's ravioli, and it's been warmed, Naruto told him as he took a sip from his own coffee. Oh, and in case you're wondering, it's Bodhi's, hope that's no problem.